Hi, my name is Myatt Green. My son Trey is recording right now. We are recording our first episode of Collecting Disney. And I thought I'd start a little series on collecting Disney props from Disneyland and maybe I'll make it in Disney World as well. But for right now, it's going to be Disneyland. Collecting Disney stuff is a passion of mine. I've been really avidly collecting for probably the last 5 to 10 years, but I've collected ever since my mom was a kid. Again, today we're going to focus on the hand stamps. The hand stamps from Disneyland, the last day, they don't do them anymore, obviously. The last day they did them was Saturday, July 8th, 2017, and they were replaced by cast members taking a photo of you as you got your ticket at Disneyland. The day they were started, I don't know. So if any of you happen to know the date they started implementing hand stamps, please post it in the comments. I'd love to know. I remember having my hand stamped as a kid when I would go to Disneyland in the 80s. So I know that some of these stamps date to the mid 80s to late 80s. So I know it happened at least then. But the hand stamps were typically an ultraviolet light, which were the ink was ultraviolet. It was only visible under ultraviolet light. And the name was based either on a character or an attraction. If I remember right, I feel like they were like lemon scented. That was a memory I have as a kid of the lemon scented hand stamps. But let's take a closer look. These hand stamps here, Merlin, Copper, Wendy, these date to the mid 1980s. Back then, they used to secure the plate by putting in nails on the tops and on the bottom side of the hand stamp, and they usually were on the edges, you can see. Now this one here is kind of special because it actually has a third nail in the middle of it, and that's something that's pretty uncommon when it comes to hand stamps. These early ones typically only had 2 on the top and 2 on the bottom. And you can see that the nameplate, how it looks a little bit different than, for instance, a newer one. You have it a little bit duller and more brown in color. Then we move over here. We have, these are Rafiki, Jafar, Clopin, and Frollo. These date to the mid to late 90s right here. You can see there's a little more polish on the handle than there is from the older one as well, and it's a little more yellow. Now, the other thing that really differentiates these is nails were not used. You can see there's no nail marks here. They were secured by epoxy behind the nameplate. And in fact, sometimes it would even break off. This side's still intact, but you can see it broke off on this side, which is pretty common for stamps of this era. Again, these date to the mid 90s. Over here, now this is interesting. Some of these newer ones, now this is Superstar, and this is Eureka. If you remember, if you're a Disney enthusiast, Superstar was a ride named after a ride called Superstar Limo, which opened with the park in February 8th, 2001, and closed in January of 2002. So it wasn't around very long. Eureka was a parade that opened when the park opened in 2001. It came back in the summer of 2002 after a seasonal hiatus, and then we never saw it again. So these stamps here would date to the early 2000s. These stamps here a little bit later, not much, but these are Hyperion and Zephyr. Again, Hyperion Theater and Golden Zephyr rides there at Disney California Adventure. These date to the mid 2000s to even the 2010s. Now these, you'll notice, they had one nail that's secured on this side, and then opposite a nail on that side as well. Now sometimes what would happen to these newer stamps is, you can see on this one here, by nailing it in, it would actually break off a piece of the stamp. And so that's kind of why they toyed with, I think, some epoxy at some point, rather than having those stamps break off a little bit too frequently. But that's kind of a quick rundown. These episodes aren't going to be very long. That's kind of a quick rundown on hand stamps and some ways to date them and kind of what they looked like through time. You know, one more thing before we end, I'll point out here, as you can see too, the polish on the newer ones, obviously, because they're, you know, newer, is a little bit brighter than the dull polish on the older ones. And again, it has even more of a yellow color. So if we were to compare one from each era here, you can kind of see the difference. We have, you know, the older one, and then we have a newer one, and then the newest that I have. But yeah, if you have any other information or you have any other questions, please feel free to post in the comments. And thanks for watching. See you next time.